So Peter Jackson's first foray into mainstream blockbuster filmmaking failed to scare up much interest at the box office, but found a healthy afterlife. So let's see what entertaining terror he was able to conjure up with the Frighteners. In the quiet town of Fairwater, Frank Bannister sells himself as a psychic investigator and paranormal exterminator, attempting to rid people of poltergeists run amok. However, it's all a ruse as these fun-loving earthbound spirits work with him, trying to cheat a buck out of unsuspecting people. Yet the town has been plagued with a series of unexplainable heart-related deaths, casting a grim shadow over Fairwater. Meanwhile, Dr. Lucy Linsky encounters Patricia Ann Bradley and a highly protective and strict mother, while filling in on a call. Alarming cuts and bruises on Patricia lead to Lucy learning of the Johnny Bartlett massacre that Patricia was the supposed accomplice of in 1958 in the nearby hospital. Yet following a run-in with husband Ray Linsky early in the day, Frank's ghost spooked the couple, leading the Bannister running a scam on them, only to see a mysterious ghostly number carved into Ray's forehead. Soon after quarreling with prickly newspaper editor Magna Reese-Jones over headlines that quash his predatory scams, Frank runs into Ray's ghost, learning he died of a supposed heart attack. Threads come further together as Frank plays middleman between Ray's ghost and Lucy at dinner. There, Bannister sees another ghostly number on someone, right before a terrifying figure appears, and crushes the man's heart in the restroom. This sends Frank chasing after the Reaper-like figure to save his next victim, Magna Reese-Jones, but his attempts aren't enough, leading to both deaths being pinned on him. With the twitchy FBI Special Agent Milton Dammers arriving to deconstruct the apparent homicides, he details the death of Frank Bannister's late wife, where she as well was found with a number carved into her head. As Frank detaches from everyone, Lucy begins to find deeper clues to the true perpetrators of these murders inside the Bradley home. But when the Reaper comes for Lucy, Frank's ghostly friends are wiped out by the ghastly ghoul. Thus, Frank has to take drastic measures to have an out-of-body experience to slay the Reaper. But far more startling revelations await them amidst the threat of the bizarre Dammers, who is convinced that Frank Bannister is a killer. So seeing its US theatrical release on July 19th of 1996, The Frighteners was directed by Peter Jackson and co-written by Jackson and his wife Fran Walsh, and saw its release dates in international territories trickle out through the end of 96 through the end of 1997, scoring a release date in New Zealand in December of 1996, which is the home country of Peter Jackson, and where the entirety of production on The Frighteners actually happened. And Jackson had been kind of making a very substantial name for himself as this indie cult horror director through the late 80s into the early 90s, and was even being courted by New Line Cinema to develop Nightmare on Elm Street sequels, to be the guy to help Leatherface Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, but none of these things really came up to fruition until, of course, many years later, when they all came together for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But The Frighteners was being developed around 1992, and between Jackson and his wife, they're kind of had to shelve it because the resources for production weren't quite there yet for themselves. And so they slipped on to doing the entire film of Heavenly Creatures, which is a major departure in style and tone, all these different things, genre as well, and garnered him such wide acclaim that a lot of people who worked on The Frighteners did so because they went off and saw Heavenly Creatures, and they were so very much impressed by that film, like, absolutely, I don't care what this guy's doing, I want to be a part of it. And the entire thing was like, okay, once that hits and to get a lot of that traction going, all these different things, kind of get hooked up with the Robert Zemeckis here, and he was already in process of producing the Tales from the Crypt television series for HBO, and the idea was kind of like, make The Frighteners into a Tales from the Crypt feature film, like they would end up doing with Demon Knight and Bordello Blood, and there's a lot of other things like Death Becomes Her and a few other things like From Dusk Till Dawn, which were kind of being courted as maybe being Tales from the Crypt things, but they kind of felt like those stories and those films, those screenplays, stood up so very much well on their own. They didn't need to be tied into that brand name. And definitely the Frighteners was along that line where Zemeckis was kind of toying with the idea of doing it himself, but he felt like as the thing was being developed and written and being worked on by Peter Jackson and Fred Walsh, he felt was so much more becoming a much more of a strong stamp of Peter Jackson's style and his sensibilities. I felt like he really wanted Jackson to take the reins of this whole thing, be produced by Universal Pictures, and get that pretty substantial budget that he'd never gotten before, about $26 million. And like I said, actually convincing Universal Pictures to have the entire thing shot in New Zealand, in Wellington, Littleton, and also Miramar, where they did a lot of the soundstage stuff, was very difficult because they ended up having a very daunting process shooting the entire film because it lasted for 6 months. And that's mainly because of all the digital effects work where they had to do certain like motion control camera and blue screen type of stuff for all the like ghost photography. When you have, say, Michael J. Fox in a scene and he's got to work off of one of the actors who's actually portraying one of the ghosts, they're not shooting the scene at the same time. They're shooting those different elements, Michael J. Fox and then the ghost actor, separately, but they're shooting them with motion control cameras and having to shoot the scenes twice. So it's a very long process at this point in time to really kind of get that down and shoot all this stuff over and over again with different setups and different actors in different types of fashion. So it's strung out for a very long period of time, but everyone was very happy with how the whole thing was going along. The thing was coming out in a very good type of way that Robert Zemeckis wasn't there all the time. He only took 2 trips out there because it's like a 14-hour plane ride halfway around the world there, but they had a lot of confidence in Peter Jackson, and that's mainly because Zemeckis put his confidence in him and vouched for him so much that everything really went off very well. And just the fact that Jackson shows a lot of quality in what he can do, a lot of the knowledge of what he knows as a filmmaker is entirely evident in this entire film, showing off so much of the things that he becomes known for later on, just using so many innovative tools at this point in time to really kind of visualize such a film that you think it costs way more than it does, looking at the way it is in terms of the quality of the effects, the quality of everything that's going on in the production. You think it'd be a much more expensive film than it is. But kind of the sad thing is that looking this film up, researching for this whole thing, I didn't even realize that the film was a box office bomb. Of a $26 million budget, it grossed only $29.3 million worldwide. It completely bombed at the box office, which is something that I almost can't wrap my head around. It's like the film has been so strongly revered. It's been so well held up by horror fans and fans of Peter Jackson stuff, and the fact that even like 2 years after the film was theatrically released, it got a signature edition Laserdisc with a director's cut on it. So it's like it clearly performed so well, probably performed so much better on home video, but the fact that it didn't really perform at all on the box office, mainly because Universal was so pleased by what's going on in the film, how the film was turning out, then in late 1995, they moved the release date from October up to July, so they cut out about 3 or 4 months of post-production, which forced them to scramble, but it also put it in kind of a weird place, the release schedule, when you kind of end up being in the wake of a big blockbuster hit like Independence Day, where a film that like you feel like it would do gangbusters in the Halloween season, like Living Hell. I think this thing could have been marketed so much better if it was released in October, maybe a little bit late September, maybe. Just I think it would have worked and performed so much better if they put it on the original release date and not moved it up to a summer release date, which felt kind of weird or whatnot. I think it would have performed exceptionally better at the box office if they kept it the original release date, because that's what Peter Jackson was intending. Release it as a Halloween film. That type of vibe, that type of thing, it would have just gone completely great on this entire vibe and everything like that. So, kind of a misfire for Universal, kind of misjudged what they kind of had there. But on the production side of things, they kind of had some weather difficulties when they're shooting in Littleton, New Zealand, which they only stayed in for about 3 weeks. But it was so rainy and muggy and kind of inhospitable to a certain degree. It kind of caused a lot of difficulties getting certain shots done, and certain days had to be kind of rearranged and stuff like that. And about 6 weeks into the shoot, the original cinematographer, Alan Bollinger, actually got into a car wreck and became injured for a certain period of time. So they kind of had to scramble and get another cinematographer on in terms of John Blick. And so Bollinger and Blick kind of traded off duties as things went along in the entire schedule here. So kind of a couple of snags in the entire run of the production here, but still kept things very much on schedule and moving along until Michael J. Fox had a little bit of an accident on set where they were kind of like not doing anything too stunt heavy, but it was the sequence where he runs off the road with Magda Reese-Jones, I believe it is, and he kind of twists his ankle when he's kind of starting to run and stuff like that, and so they were able to kind of like finish shooting for the day, but his ankle just swelled up like living hell the next day, and he kind of had to try to do like a couple of sit down scenes where he didn't have to move around beyond his feet or whatnot, but they kind of like had to like, okay, we got to kind of shut things down for about a week or two or something like that to kind of let him heal up and get back on his feet and stuff like that. But Jackson felt like it was such a long production that really kind of aided things overall, where everyone was able to like take a break, catch their breath, kind of have him and Fran Walsh kind of work on the script a little bit, kind of retool a few things because they kind of like took some things out, kind of rewrote some sequences, kind of figured things out with a little bit more finesse in certain ways. So they kind of like felt like that was very advantageous for the production, but not so much for Michael J. Fox. But with Jackson having a much higher budget than he ever had before, you can definitely see how that amplifies his style and sensibilities with much higher end tools and resources. Just see so many different qualities that go into the entire film with such a sharp, slick, snappy presentation, everything he puts together here. Just like you can see so much that balancing the horror and the humor and all that type of stuff really requires a very delicate balance, a delicate skill involved with it to make sure everything kind of melds its way into the entire film very much perfectly. That like a lot of people will try to do that and be very unbalanced and things will feel a little jarring going between different things, but everything settles into a very comparable world here that everything feels so good that you have kind of slightly cartoonish elements with the ghosts being a little bit more exaggerated, a lot more comedy based and stuff like that. But you can still get the seriousness of the entire thing. You still get the dramatic moments filtered in. We got scenes between Milton Dammers and Frank Bannister, and they're kind of working on their different styles of characters here, where Dammers is that much more exaggerated, almost comedy character, but he's got such a great unnerving quality opposite Bannister, where he's playing a much more somber type of thing, and the scenes work so very well because you set up a world that kind of functions in a type of way to kind of tip the balance of the tones back and forth and have them meld together so well that you continue to have great scene after great scene. This whole thing that delivers laughs and also terror and all these scary little things that work so beautifully together because it's just such a masterful quality of such a talented filmmaker on display here. And like I said, all the production qualities go into this thing looks absolutely fabulous. All the stuff they're doing with the practical locations look absolutely great. Trying to double things for North America here. They're kind of like saying, make it look like Midwestern North America, but it kind of feels, because it's such a coastal town, it's kind of murky and rainy and stuff like that, it kind of feels like either like Pacific Northwest or kind of New England type of feel to it in some place like that. So it has such a great quality, but it's not like specific to any particular area. So it's like, it's a great quality what New Zealand brings the entire thing as an aesthetic, as a vibe, all the different things, and capturing that on film with all the different styles of the cinematography going on, the whole thing where again, Blake and Bollinger they clicked into each other's styles so very well for Blake to kind of pick up what Bollinger had been establishing so far. What Jackson really wanted to see is visuals the entire film. It all comes together seamlessly between the two of them working on this entire thing. Such a great thing, and they didn't do like a ton of storyboarding and whatnot. Didn't do so much that because they were changing so many things as they were going along, so they kind of had an uncertainty about is like certain visual effects shots or stuff like that, how many they were going to need in certain places. So as they're working on this thing for months and months, they still remained on a very steady track to make sure everything felt very consistent and how everything was being executed, and everything looked so absolutely fantastic with all the kind of just the great camera work he got going on this whole thing. A lot of sequences are doing a lot of steady cam work to move the thing around, and Jackson was like, he wanted to have a lot of movement in the entire thing. And that's why they used a lot of motion control cameras doing the effects work in the whole thing to maintain that sort of movement, that quality, that energy going through the entire film. Such a great energy overall. Just everything comes together very, very well. He knows exactly what he wants to do and what sequences that hit off the right tones, the right vibes, kind of tip things back and forth here and there, just like it's so very well and fluidly put together, the entire thing. I think Jackson did a fantastic job helming this film, just putting together such great things overall. But threading these tones through this massively talented cast you have involved with this entire thing is just a spectacular feat on its own. Getting Michael J. Fox involved, where the Robert Zemeckis association is very much evident through Back to the Future, but he wasn't entirely interested up front and stuff like that, but he decided to go off and see Heavenly Creatures at the Toronto Film Festival, which completely sold him on Peter Jackson, just like 100% on board. And just the interesting thing that Frank Bannister, as he's written, is not a likable character at the beginning of the film. He's a guy who takes advantage of people with their grief and their sorrow and trying to prey on people and kind of, he's just a huckster, he's a con man. And he's not very likable as written, but the fact is Michael J. Fox has such an engaging, charismatic presence that he brings you into the character. He tethers you into the performance because he has those qualities. You know, there's certain quirks and stuff like that with the character, but it shows that there's layers, there's a depth to it, and to be seen as the film goes along, and he has perfect chemistry with absolutely everyone in the film, which is, again, something that's just an amazing type of thing where you got a lot of the guys like Shai McBride and Jim Fife and John Astin here, like, they're not actually on set with Michael J. Fox. They're shooting their things separately with the motion control cameras later on, so it's like he's not directly interacting with all the actors, but you get that sensibility that they have this comedic timing, they have this vibe, they have this chemistry between them that they're able to tap into even if they're not all on set at the same time. So it's like such great talent involved with the whole thing. And again, the fact that, again, you get this entire a fantastic arc for the character, full board type of fleshed out arc here that you see all the little details of his backstory work out as the film goes along, but you see how his character kind of softens when you get the entire thing where he's starting to put the pieces together about the numbers on the forehead, and Ray Linsky dies, and he's kind of involved with that entire thing, trying to figure things out with him and Lucy and all that type of stuff. It gets a little bit more humanity out of the character, starts to soften him, starts to warm him up a little bit. You start to connect with him more. It feels more likable. So the film gradually moves that character along as he gets more and more involved with different people, and Lucy starts to create this entire loving bond with him, started to have that quality go up with the two characters there. So it's like, I like that quality. And again, you got the characters of Cyrus and Stewart and Judge, whatnot, kind of giving that quality that all these ghosts and whatnot, all these people are much better friends to him than he is to them. But as you see that loyalty build up through the film and see what they're willing to go through for him to kind of push him along in this whole thing and just resolve this entire plot that's going on, it starts to bring more qualities into it. All the other characters inform his character about where he's been, how he is, what kind of person he really actually is, on top of all this huckster type of stuff going on with him. So it's like, I like how you surround him with very likable, engaging characters to kind of give him a little bit more context. It's not so much of an island of a character here. You get that certain quality where Michael J. Fox can work off of those characters, bring something more to the table of the character, and see where the character is going and how those layers peel off the character as the film goes along to get him as a much more likable protagonist. Get him as much more just empathetic. You see so much more as you learn the entire backstory. You see all the little things kind of connecting as the film goes along with his character, and all the backstories and stuff like that. It's wonderfully woven together, and just Michael J. Fox brings all the qualities. I like so much the chemistry he has with Trini Alvarado in this whole thing. You bring so much depth and fleshed out qualities to the character of Frank Bannister here through the writing, but also Michael J. Fox nails every second of this entire film. And I like the fact that that relationship between him and Magna Reese-Jones, that she is portrayed wonderfully by Elizabeth Hawthorne here, just getting that prissy English quality to her, that she feels like an antagonist, but everything she's saying about Bannister from a certain perspective is entirely right, that he's taken advantage of people, preying on their sorrows and stuff like that, and taking them for money. It's like, she's entirely right, but I like that the way she presents herself, the performance makes her feel antagonistic, very much a grating, abrasive personality towards Bannister. We're trying to follow Bannister as the lead of the film, so we're trying to see things from his perspective, but she is very much right in all the things she's going along, even though she doesn't have all the pieces of the puzzle to really tell you exactly what's going on in the entire plot here. So I like that dichotomy, that all the ghosts and whatnot know exactly the dangers going on, but all the living people think Frank Bannister is a danger, he's a threat, and all these different things as the film goes along. So I like that balance you have to hit on that entire thing, where it gets, again, the scary stuff along with the humor and whatnot, and just Fox brings all those qualities to work off of those dynamics between all the different qualities of the story and the characters he works with absolutely fantastically. And Trini Alvarado here, just such a warm, lovely, fresh presence in the entire film, and being named Lucy Linsky clearly was an homage to the actress of Melanie Linsky, who was one of the co-stars of Heavenly Creatures for Peter Jackson. But I like her so much because she grounds the film so much. She tethers Frank Bannister to an emotional base here, that as you're getting things a little more silly, a little more comical, and feel their exaggerated elements, she brings such a great stability, such a grounded sensibility to her film, that you can weave all those emotional threads going on with Frank Bannister and the things that are also going on with Ray, where she has such a great chemistry with Peter Dobson and Michael J. Fox here. She brings such a sweet quality, but I like so much that she is assertive. She's got a conviction to her. I love the interaction she has with Jeffrey Combs as Dammers. He's such a weird, creepy guy, but she has such a great way of just like cutting through the bullshit, getting straight to the point, and just standing up to him when he's being just a piece of shit. I love the fact that she is written and she is performed as a very intelligent doctor. She has that quality about her, that she has compassion, but also I like so much her quality that she brings such a warmth, such a brightness to the entire film, but all the intelligence she has as a character, just being a fully fleshed out dimensional character here, run through her performance. It's just fantastically well put together all over the place. I just like her. She's just fantastic. She's absolutely fantastic. I love everything she does in this film. Wonderful. And you know what? I love Shy McBride. The guy is such a fantastic talent. There's no shortage of roles I've absolutely loved him in. And getting him and Jim Fife, and of course, then John Astin as these ghosts for Frank Bannister was the thing where, like, they wanted to get some comedic actors, some guys who could add something more into the script. Because Jackson and Fran Walsh, they knew they weren't hitting the comedy as hot as possible, so they wanted some guys to just kind of improv some stuff, kind of add some stuff, work on the script with them to add more to the characters. And Shai just went into an audition, just like improv a whole bunch of stuff and just did a fantastic job of it. Jim Fice added so much as Stewart as well, just like hit all these things, just make it a much funnier film than they would have otherwise. Get some fantastically sharp talents involved with this whole thing. And of course, John Astin, a fantastic legend in the field of acting and comedy and stuff like the original Gomez Addams we had back in the black and white era of that Addams Family series. Awesome type of stuff, just like really fantastic actors with great designs to them. Very era appropriate, very much distinctive as characters, and great work altogether. These three hit all things such a great way, and they added so much value to the entire film with their talents and the input they put into the script and all these different things. Awesome type of stuff in that regard, but the incomparable Jeffrey Combs here, just like fantastic, just like talk about fantastic talents. This guy is just amazing. Absolutely amazing. Just like, you know, from like a Reanimator and a couple other things. I know him so much from his various roles on Star Trek series. The guy's just a brilliant actor, and just this entire role of Milton Dammers, I see it as him stretching the skin of Danvers all across himself. Just this weird manic energy he has in the entire thing. Just so unnerving of a character that a lesser actor would not get the eccentricity so much. Not get all these weird, bizarre type of things that meld into the tone of the film so brilliantly. But he gets such a great psychology into the madness, the weird, traumatized nature of this guy, this FBI special agent who's been undercover with the weirdest freaking cult you could possibly imagine, who've done all this freakish mutilation and all these weird-ass things. Just like this guy who's just been through 1,000 times the ringer in just the most psychologically bending type of ways possible. So it's like he just brings every quality you want to this thing and just nails it so absolutely perfectly. And I like just, he's got that, he brings the perfect kind of amalgamation in this entire film where he is completely a comedy character here, but he has such that unhinged, unpredictable quality to him that you don't know exactly what he's going to do from moment to moment. So he still makes this tension, this scary quality about the entire film, this danger when, again, like Frankie gets put in the cooler where he's going to have the out-of-body experience, and then Dammer shows up and he's going to take Lucy away and kind of screw off the entire plan here. So it's like, it's got that entire quality where it's just like he's just scary enough amidst all the bizarre type of things he's doing in the entire film. That just adds the perfect amount of danger, the perfect amount of peril, and the perfect amount of entertainment value. It's all just woven together so beautifully in his performance here. Awesome, just awesome stuff all over the place with his character and his performance. I can't say much more about it, but like another fantastic genre act here with Dee Wallace, who was Dee Wallace Stone at the time, who was married to Christopher Stone for a period of time, but apparently did pass away during the production of the entire film, so I don't know if she was still filming at the time he passed, but that happened in 1985, and the film was released in mid-96, but man, she's so good, and clearly, everything I've heard about her, she's the sweetest person you'd ever want to work with, just a wonderful, wonderful lady, absolutely perfect, and she just twisted herself completely into this role of Patricia here, just like awesome. She's so good. Just first of all, she's playing vulnerable and victimized throughout the majority of the entire film here, seeing that quality. She's scared of her mother, and you're playing these things with Johnny Bartlett. You're not entirely certain what's exactly going on there, and having all this stuff going on in the flashbacks and stuff like that, and the newsreels footage and whatnot. And portraying the young Patricia in those flashback sequences is Nicola Cliff, who does such a seamless, equally sinister job portraying the role. Just a fantastic piece of work from her as well. But like, I like that quality where you're getting this sort of mystery involved with that household and everything like that. It creates an interesting mystique for the entire film. A little mystery to kind of figure out where all the pieces are threading through and how everything's going to connect at the point. But she does such a great job playing that type of character. But once you get that turn, and Johnny Bartlett's kind of revealed, and all these different things start to twist on itself towards the third act, she's absolutely just incredible. Just getting that creepy, that sexual tension between her and Jake Busey. Again, a lot of the time they're not even on the screen together. Again, there's all kind of special effects sort of magic in a certain way, but they have such a great energy between them that is just insane type of stuff. Just like they just got this great, again, bizarre energy. All these bad guys in the entire film with Dammers and Patricia and Johnny and all this type of stuff, they have this bizarre energy flowing through the performances so much, and they do such a great job. Jake Busey, awesome in this entire thing, just getting up on that just freakish quality in a straight way, seeing that he just is completely off the deep end to the nth degree and just completely murders nut job in a certain way. I just love that chemistry between Jake Busey, Dee Wallace, and all that type of stuff. She's just magnificent in this entire film. Everyone in this film is just absolutely magnificent. I could just go on. There's probably like another 8 people in this cast could talk about Arlie Ermey getting the whole thing where do kind of a parody on the Full Metal Jacket thing where they weren't entirely sure who to get to role. They were auditioning people, couldn't quite nail anyone, but they just kind of reached out to him and said, "You'd love to do it." He does a wonderful job of it. And just like everyone in this entire cast, top to bottom, inside and out, so magnificently talented, filtered through a fantastic screenplay. So lush and vibrant what everything is written in the entire film. It's wonderful stuff. And complementing the film so well with his musical score is Danny Elfman, who had worked with a lot of Tim Burton films up to this point in time, so Peter Jackson was like, this is exactly the right guy to get the entire balance between the humor and the horror I want to go with, and really understand the vibes and the sounds of what I want to do here. And Elfman says he's only got maybe about 2 or 3 different types of musical voices in his head for certain things, but it kind of creates such a great quality of this film that it's like, even though it's still kind of familiar what he's done before, still creates a very distinctive sound and quality with the entire film that really hones in so much on the entire vibe the film's going for, and just the shifting between the different tones and vibes or whatnot between the entire film that goes off. It's such a great thing, and I like so much what he does with the whole thing, and he seemed like he had a great time with this entire process. He seemed like he was very much involved with wanting to work with Peter Jackson. He was so very complimentary towards the film itself, all this type of stuff. He looks like he had a great time working on it, and unfortunately the soundtrack is out of print. You can't find it to buy anywhere unless it's on secondhand market, which you're probably going to be paying a lot of money because people like to gouge on the secondhand market for out of print stuff. But if you can grab it any type of way on the cheap or anything like that, or hopefully maybe someday an Entrada, La La Land Records or something like that will put out a full complete score, whatnot, remastered. Hopefully that'll happen at some point in time, because I think it's a really good piece of work. And anyone's a Danny Elfman completist, definite fan of whatnot, they'd really want to have this one because he did a fantastic piece of work. And just it threads in so seamlessly with all the Tim Burton stuff, but still does have his own identity amongst all his other work in that regard. But you want to talk about the great stuff in this film, just like, again, so much great stuff as it is, but like the really kind of groundbreaking stuff was the effects work. But first, talk about all the practical effects, the creature effects, the makeup work done in the film, because they did employ Rick Baker to work on the Judge, have him design it and kind of sculpted to John Astin's face, and of course had one of his assistants go over to New Zealand to actually do the application for the film proper. But it's a fantastic design, up to the standards of everything else he's done in the career, from American Werewolf in London up to the stuff with Men in Black and stuff like, worked on the Schumacher Batman films, of course, one of my favorites, Jack Nicholson and Wolf, but fantastic work from him. And everything else was picked up by Richard Taylor and the Weta Workshop and all that type of stuff. Their creature effects department did an incredible job, just everything up to their standards of what you know from Lord of the Rings and everything else from that forward. Absolutely smashed the crap out of it, just having fantastic original designs, inspired type of stuff, just doing a lot of innovative work overall to do animatronics and all the other design work they did on the whole film. Impeccable type of work. But talking about the digital effects involved with this film from Weta, just like, I can't I can't wrap my head around the fact that this film, 96, with this kind of budget, about $26 million or whatnot, that they were able to achieve so much on such a high-grade quality that still stands up today. When you kind of look at a lot of the early, mid, late 90s, just anything 90s, there's usually a lot of CGI. It's like, you look back and it's like, oh, that's not quite up to the standards. That doesn't look quite good. In retrospect, some of it might not have even looked good at the time. But you look at this thing and just like the fact that they worked so much on this whole thing, when the release date got pushed up a couple months, they actually had to scramble and find a bunch of other digital effects artists to come onto the film to kind of like double up the workload, just kind of like get more people involved to do more work on a shorter schedule. And the fact is, 98% of the digital effects in this film absolutely hold up. They're incredible type of work, just like the fact that there's so many different types of effects with all the ghosts going on, the whole thing, when they got the blue screen stuff, the motion control cameras, and having even a special piece of software they used where you could control like the opacity and the glow and all these different things, the tint and all these different things you could do with the ghosts themselves was kind of a nice little thing. But the fact that they have all that stuff, and plus you got the entire thing with the Reaper going through the walls type of stuff. Like, I was watching it for the review and whatnot, it's like just a little bit of a touch of Nightmare on Elm Street there. From the original Elm Street, where Freddy kind of pushes himself through the wall there. It looks so much evocative of that type of effect in that film. And it's not a bad thing. Definitely one of the best guys to take inspiration from the horror genre would be Wes Craven. So, and I think Peter Jackson probably was definitely a fan of that film, especially being quoted so much for Elm Street sequels. He probably had that a little bit in the back of his mind coming up with that idea, I'm sure. It's like, I love all the textures it has over it. I like the whole thing. When it comes out of the mirror, there's an incredible looking effect, entirely imaginative type of things going on throughout the entire film, just like how the Reaper moves and swoops around and all these different things they used to really make a very scary freaking villain in the entire film, just creature. It's very terrifying to certain degrees in the entire film. Just like it really creates a great on-your-edge, scary quality to the entire film. It uses very simple iconography, but so well designed where it has like the hands coming out of the cloak and all these types of things where you almost can't even perceive that there's something else underneath. It just feels like an overall specter in a certain way. Great how they move that stuff around and use a lot of miniature work as well. When they had to fly through the city or fly through the cemetery in a certain way, they really added that type of quality and kind of composite everything together. It's really just inventive, fertile type of things you have going on with the entire ideas and concepts and all the different things they're implying here with the effects, but also the design and the imagination involved with all these different sequences to tell a great story here. They really do a fantastic job inside and out of this whole thing. Just like, again, all the technology they were using was cutting edge type of stuff. The fact they only had like one computer when Widow was starting up and stuff like that going into this whole thing, and they had to expand their entire thing because Peter Jackson wanted to make something that kind of utilized all these new tools and the technologies to their fullest effect possible. So he really put an investment on this whole thing with his own company of Weta here to go into this film and handle this workload and meet the demands when, again, all these different things happen where they kind of shorten the post-production schedule. They double up all that type of stuff to make sure they could get to the point that there's so many effects in this film that I just feel like there's so many other films of this time that have more than double the budget this film had that don't look half as good as this film does. It's just an incredible feat that they just nailed that so well and just laid that groundwork for what they would end up doing just a couple of years later with the Lord of the Rings trilogy and earning all the Oscar wins and stuff like that. Just made themselves a major stamp on the map of visual effects in this entire thing. Incredible type of work across the board with Weta. Just like, this was like a higher profile film, I absolutely believe it would have deserved a nomination for visual effects, everything on that front, because they are just incredible type of stuff. I love just everything that's going on with the creativity involved with it and just the execution overall and all levels involved with the effects are just absolutely top-notch type of stuff. But talking about the Frighteners, just in summation here, with the screenwriting involved with this whole thing, I just like love everything that involves, again, the characters, but you got full arcs in the whole thing from Frank Bannister and all these little things, and just how everything kind of lays the seeds beginning of the film and starts to weave its way through, just like, I'm not quite sure where the Patricia, Johnny stuff is going to weave into the main plot here, but as you get the whole thing with the name numbers on the forehead, and then you get get Dammers talking about Frank Bannister's wife, and the number that carved into her forehead, that's where everything starts to click into place and see how the threads are starting to converge together as the film goes along. Just like, it's such great, efficient, fantastic screenwriting, this whole thing. And Jackson is just able to just intensify his filmmaking skills and storytelling abilities here to weave together such a great atmospheric, entertaining, but also it's still scary. There's certain points that are just really thrilling type of stuff going on in the film that just hits all the right buttons, all the different things going on. Just like whatever they did with the theatrical cut, I don't know exactly what the ethos was behind a lot of things. Maybe it was just like cutting things down for runtime, but absolutely the director's cut is the only way to go with this whole thing, because you kind of lose a lot of little subplots, a lot of explanations for certain things. Just like everything just hits its fullest, richest potential with that director's cut, because everything's involved with it that needs to be involved with the film, because I can't see anything really being cut out of it to still make it a coherent film. So that might have affected some things going into the box office, but still I just think there's so many great things involved with the film that just shows off just the absolute potential Peter Jackson had this time, and it really kind of made good on many times after this. So it's like the guy had such a great vision for the entire thing, and backed by all the right talents, Robert Zemeckis and all these other people involved in the whole thing, to really see what he could bring to it and just have that confidence in him to bring the bigger budget stuff onto the film and really have the sensibilities and knows the resources, knows the tools and all these different things. That's something kind of thrust in it. They kind of have to be kind of guided through all the stuff and here and there and everywhere. Jackson founded his own effects company. He's founded all these different things. He's already done several films. They've gotten a lot of traction for him. He knows exactly what he's doing, moving things forward and kind of expanding that New Zealand film industry on his own regards and stuff like that. So there's so many different things involved with this whole thing, and just seeing someone like Robert Zemeckis kind of back him after he's done a bunch of special effects films with the Back to the Future films, Death Becomes Her, Forrest Gump, using a lot of groundbreaking technology. So very much a perfect wavelength between those two filmmakers to really kind of hit it off. I could definitely see Zemeckis like really getting into the tone of the whole thing, understanding the comedy beats, and still kind of weaving in the dramatic stuff involved with it. So I think it's a perfect marriage between a producer and a director in that regard. So I just think there's so many good things in the whole film that just absolutely just ties everything together. I like how the film ends. I like how you like Bannister kind of thwarts the villains as they kind of double crosses them, kind of fakes them out in a certain way, bringing them up to heaven and whatnot, but then they get swallowed up in the entire thing. But the film ends on such a warm, positive, kind of fun note there, where you have just Lucy and Frank there as the house is getting demolished. It's like there's the remnants of an old life and stuff like that I need to break away from. And just like the whole thing of like Danvers is now haunting the freaking sheriff and stuff like that. That's great. And just the warm quality and the fun thing. Just having the fact that go live your life, Frank. That his friends, his late wife, stuff like that, up there in heaven, just like it's time to start living. And that's the thing Judge was saying earlier, is like death is no way to make a living. So they're always kind of pushing that idea towards him. It's like stop gripping onto this tragedy and all these different things from your past that made you kind of a jaded figure. Let go of that and kind of move forward with your life and be happy and stuff like that. So it's a great story. It's a great story, executed magnificently well. I just love all the quality. It just leaves you on such a great upbeat note. And I like the cover of Don't Fear the Reaper, which is one of my absolute favorite songs of all time from Blue Oyster Cult. But they got a New Zealand band called the Mutton Birds do a cover, and it's fantastic. It's a great ending to the film. Just absolutely pitch perfect ending. And every single note. I can't ask for much more. It's just a fantastic film. It's absolutely fantastic. And I know there's kind of things going around with like Arrow Video was being rumored to doing a 4K restoration about like 2 years ago or something like that. And we haven't heard anything about it since then. It just kind of like lost in the ether. So we have no idea if there's a holdup, if it's not actually licensed out to them, what's really happening on that front. Certain people have had certain problems with Peter Jackson, like remastering the Lord of the Rings stuff for 4K. And there's a lot of color correction changes and different things going on in the whole thing, and some DNR things going on with that. So kind of waiting with a little bit of bated breath, but there ends up being a proper, fantastic 4K restoration of this film. I think it would actually look just brilliant. I think it just could match up to the actual brilliance of the film. But in regards to that, guys, I just think it's a really fantastic film. I think it's really just wonderful. So guys, I really like to hear what you guys feel about The Frighteners, because there's just so much to talk about. So many fantastic scenes, such funny things, and just scary stuff overall. Just like, it's a beautiful film. So guys, there's always the Patreon to contribute something every month to get a little early access to things. Or if you can just want to hit up the Super Things feature on YouTube here, go straight ahead and just contribute to support the channel. So regardless, watching things and commenting and liking and sharing links around extremely helps absolutely everything for things to expand around here and still maintain a very high quality for you guys. So thanks so much. Take care. Bye bye.